Good morning, almost afternoon. How's everybody doing? We good? You enjoying Zoomtopia? Yeah? Great. So as I was standing up here, I realized the only thing between you and lunch is us. So we're actually going to go for 2 hours instead of 1, and I hope you brought your snacks. No, in all seriousness, my name is Andrew Cannata. I'm a senior sales engineer here at Zoom, and we really, really appreciate you all being here to learn a little bit about how to build your Zoom rooms. Dan?
I'm Dan Kuresman, sales engineer at Zoom, and excited to be here just like you guys are. And we've got some great panelists to talk about Zoom rooms with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. Ann and Paul are great. I'm not going to ruin their intros. They're going to give their own intros. But before we do that, how many people in this room have deployed Zoom rooms in their organization? Wow. That is a lot of Zoom rooms. How many people have deployed 5 or less? All right. 10 or less? Okay. Anybody deployed over 25 Zoom rooms?
Nice.
Anybody deployed over 50 Zoom rooms? 100 Zoom rooms? Wow, this is fantastic. So this is why we're here, right? Dan and I both, our backgrounds, I came from Lifesize and Logitech for 10 years. I actually helped do the worldwide deployment of video for Logitech. Dan comes from a long line of deploying conference rooms. And the reason we're giving this session is really to just talk about the difficulties of the conference room and how Zoom is able to solve them through Zoom rooms. Okay, who here has not heard of Zoom rooms, has not deployed Zoom rooms? That's another good question to ask. Perfect, so we're gonna go through just a really quick overview of Zoom rooms so that when we get to the panelists, you understand what we're talking about. All right, so what is Zoom rooms? Zoom rooms is a software-defined video conferencing system for the conference room. Okay, we're all very used to the hardware-defined space. You know, Lifesize, Polycom, Cisco, a proprietary endpoint that you put in your conference room to do really one thing, which is video collaboration. Zoom has really changed the game in the conference room space. And since we're a software company, we said, you know what? We can really do this in today's world better and more efficiently with more features and simpler with software. Okay? So what we did is we built the first software-defined video conferencing system for Mac and Windows. We're non-proprietary hardware. We actually don't sell hardware. We don't develop any hardware. We use off-the-shelf hardware. Like if for Mac, we use Mac Minis, and we use iPads. For Windows, we use an Android tablet. We use an Intel NUC or Dell Optiplex. This allows you more flexibility in your conference room to really, you saw all the people that have deployed more than 100 conference rooms with Zoom rooms. It's because of the flexibility. And there are really some key things that we did with our software that are just better than hardware. We're able to give you more flexibility, right? You can design the conference room around the needs, right? What is that conference room being used for? How many different camera options do I have? How many different audio options do I have? It's a very flexible system, and you can design it the way you need to. We also designed it for rapid deployment. So I like to say the first time you set up Zoom rooms, you can do it in 20 minutes. The second time you do it, you can do each one in probably under a minute. Okay, once you've learned it, you can deploy these things so quickly. It's a matter of setting up the hardware. Building the account takes less than a minute in our Zoom portal. Okay, we do offer all of the features that hardware has been promising for many, many, many years. Right, things like multiple types of wireless content sharing, one button to start scheduled meetings in the conference room, so that anybody who has not used the system before can just walk in and hit one button to start their meeting. Right? They don't need to take 5 to 10 minutes of their meeting time after your meetings are scheduled back to back to back to set up the video conferencing system. Okay? We really designed it around ease of use, which goes off of that one button to push feature. And then we really wanted to generate greater return on your investment. Right? The more time people spend trying to get video conferencing working, the less time they're spending in their meetings. All right, so this is why we designed Zoom rooms, and I'm so excited to have Paul and Ann up here to talk to us about their deployments. The very different models on how they deployed, but both very effective. A couple of housekeeping rules before we get started with the Q&A session. We do have a raffle.
That's right.
All right. You want to talk about it?
What are we raffling off?
We are raffling off a full Zoom room kit.
What?
And 1 year of licensing for the Zoom rooms. So just for being here, right? Just for being here today, somebody's going to walk away with a full Zoom room kit and a year of licensing, okay? They are going to pass out raffle tickets as we continue, all right? So if you don't get one, yell at them, all right? All right, so now we're going to go ahead and get started.
So I'm out.
No? Yeah, we'll do intros.
We'll start with Ann. Want to tell us a bit about yourself, Ann?
Of course. So my name is Ann Wilcox. I'm the head of IT for a venture capital growth equity firm here in the Bay Area. We have offices in California, Manhattan, and London. I have been there for 9 years, and I've held similar roles at companies such as Netflix, some consulting firms, Monster.com.
And
So
how
happy
many
to be
Zoom
here
rooms
today.
have you guys deployed?
We are at 9 right now,
okay.
so little, we're like a baby Zoom room client now compared to.
And Paul, a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Paul Sturm from Gap Inc., and yes, I'm wearing Gap all the way except for my shoes, or Gap and Old Navy, actually. I've been with Gap for 17 years. I am the architect for collaboration and communication. About 8 years ago, I got this weird project to migrate our email from on-house to Office, to Microsoft Dedicated. And from there, I started playing with collaboration tools and fell in love. We unified our video conferencing environment 5 years ago to another solution. And we just starting in March, we replaced that solution with Zoom. We've rolled out 133 rooms with 9 in the pipeline right now.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
So Ann, as an early adopter of Zoom rooms, what were some of the key success criteria for choosing a conference room solution?
So for us, we had 2 initiatives. We had what we had termed A3, which was anywhere, anytime, any device. So we'd started that concept, although there were a few people in the company called Ann Where, Ann Device, Ann it, you know. So play on Ann. And then the other side of that is culturally within IT, we had some values that we held very strongly, which are cloud, data utilization. I'm not going to say cheap, but inexpensive for a small firm. And so we had all these, it was sort of a coming together of everything. We had Tandberg, Cisco, super expensive. You're talking 80 grand just on these Cisco equipment rooms with racks of management gear. All of it was coming end of life. So we were in this really happy place in that we needed something. And if you looked out of the providers that were out there, Zoom, and I think we pushed them a little, or like, I think they called it Zoom Presence in the beginning. It's a horrible name. And I kept saying, Ann, let's talk Presence. I'm like, what are you I just want to talk Zoom rooms. This is what I want. So it was really happy place. It all converged at the same time. And the key factors to success for us was it fit our culture, it fit our core values, and the one-button start.
Yeah.
How could you go wrong?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how did ease of use play into your key factor for your users?
It was, although we didn't think of it as a very interesting value in the beginning, but the fact that our EA staff, who, if you ever come meet with us, and I invite you all to come hang out and have a cup of coffee, our EAs will bring you into the office, make you a custom latte, whatever you want, bring you water or infused water if you wish. And now, with all those responsibilities those executive admins had, dealing with our old Crestrons and trying to remember who to mute and not mute and muting speakers and making sure no one said anything inappropriate and starting a slide and start over and start on. Now they just come in and little pinky, hit the start button.
And do you find that the users who are using the system after it started find the interface easy enough to?
We've had executives now who are like, nope, I got this. They'll walk in a room and they can hit that start button with their own finger.
Yeah, what's funny is when we were having this conversation, we were talking about the hot seat. I used to be in the hot seat at Logitech. I think you had a lot of hot seat moments. Do you have those hot seat moments anymore?
Not really. I think the one that is interesting now is when people come in to present to us and they see those HDMI and VGA cables on the table and they immediately go grab them and start ripping them out of the table. I'm like, whoa, 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 wireless. So we actually have labels now that go over all those saying, backup only, do not use, 100% wireless.
That's
So the hot seat has completely changed for IT. We're really there just to support what's going on in the organization, and now we can focus on other activities versus, we used to be the one that every meeting, hit start, hit stop. We actually had an IT person have to sit in every major meeting and babysit.
That's another
Waste
way that
of
this goes
resources.
back into that ROI, because
Exactly.
you're not wasting that staff person sitting there for 3 hours for the CEO to have a meeting anymore.
Exactly.
How long
exactly.
did it take you? How long did it take you to transition from the hot seat?
Oh, I don't know, for me, like 2.5 seconds. But for Rick, who's in the room here, I would say it was a good year. It really was, because some of the EAs, some of the executives are still nervous. They're like, it can't be this easy, Ann. Like before, you emailed us every week saying, don't touch the Crestron. Don't touch the Crestron. And now you want us to touch. So we actually had to, do a lot around educating. It's okay, you're not gonna break it. Touch it, it's fine.
Yeah, and I think that was just probably ingrained from over a decade of the same type of video conferencing system
20 years
coming
of
out.
don't touch.
Yep, exactly. Which actually brings me to my next question for Paul, which is you were mainly a standards-based video conferencing company before you brought on Zoom. So how did that transition, what did that transition look like for you? Why did you decide, we talked about the conference room of the future. Why was this your conference room of the future outside of H323 and SIP?
So when we made the decision to move to Zoom, we were about 50% standards-based and 50% another hardware, software-based codec vendor. Most of our standards-based systems were not even end of life, they were like 5 years past end of life. So we had to get rid of them. Over time, we were gonna get rid of them anyway. We made the decision to just in one fell swoop as we adopted Zoom to replace those with Zoom systems and bite the bullet. And we did a ton of planning, a ton of standardization. We defined 4 room types that we were gonna deploy, and we stuck to those. We developed a saying across our team that we were gonna do everything with military precision. I had rooms full of TVs and stands and microphone systems that we had all staged to replace it. And we replaced, I think we had 124 rooms, and we replaced more than half of them in 2 weeks, and then we rolled out the rest of them over the next 5 weeks after that. So we're at 133 rooms right now.
I'd say that's rapid deployment.
Rapid deployment, lots of planning. My biggest key for doing that was checklists. And when you write a checklist the first time, as we found out, you test it, and it didn't work, or it worked, but there was a lot of gaps. You rewrite it, and our checklist size went from 1 page to 3 pages, step by step. Everything from putting that screw into the bolt at the back of the stand to the biggest thing like mounting the TV on the wall was something we had to consider, and we've got everything laid out that way.
That's great.
That is, I got a follow-up to that, Paul. I know a lot of people struggle with how to get started in deploying rooms, especially in mass quantity rooms like you did. I know at Gap you guys standardize on a couple different kits or builds, if you will. What led you to how you designed those rooms? What hardware you chose? What was the key pieces to that?
So during our pilot, which was about 6 months, we built 5 Zoom rooms of different types, and we tried every single bit of hardware that was out there. Everything you see out on the floor out there, we tried different things. We ended up standardizing on a very discrete set of components. Is this when I can pop up the slide? So we defined a very discrete set of components that we use for our rooms. We're very meticulous about if someone comes in and says, oh, well, I've got this old PC that I can use as my Zoom room to save some money. Can we use it? We say no. If they say, we have this old microphone system that we used on our old room, and we want to save $500 on a microphone system, we say no, because we learned. We dealt with all the pain of having microphone systems that don't work, microphone systems that are easy to unplug, so we really defined a clean set of it. Even on our, if you go to the Type 3 room, the Type 2 room is just a single screen room. Type 1 is a dual screen room. This is a mobile cart. This isn't even running the Zoom Room software. It's running Zoom Room desktop, or Zoom desktop in a person's office. We even put the high-end microphone system on that because one of the things we've defined as part of our systems was sound is the most critical thing. You know, I know people make jokes about blocky videos and stuff like that, but people can have a conversation with someone who looks blocky as long as they can hear and talk back and forth to them. If you can't talk to them and you can't get your point across, you have a failed meeting. So we want to make sure that everything is there. And we define sound as the most important component in our rooms. Everything else is important and everything else has to work, but it's the most important component of our rooms that we build.
How long would you say that you spent just doing the prep work before that 2 weeks? I know
About a
we worked
month.
pretty closely on.
Yeah, we
on
spent about a month placing orders with a hardware vendor and getting everything done and getting POs and all the stuff you do in a big corporate environment, getting everything all standardized. And I spent 2 weeks begging our operations folks to give me a room where I could stage hardware. And we did that up front. And we just had this room. Someone walked by the room and said, "Ooh, can I have a TV for home?" And but it was there was a ton of work done in that thing. We had the first weekend, we had a team in New York and a team in San Francisco, about 15 technicians, and we did 8 rooms in both locations per day. Now we pre-imaged our codecs. We're a Dell shop, so we used PCs, not Macs. We did as much work up front as we could. We made sure the right hardware, the right images were on the pieces of hardware. We had everything kind of staged into little kits. We had little piles on the floor in a staging area that they just brought into a room. We'd have our hardware vendors come in and load them out. It was amazing to see and be part of.
Wow. And this is slightly different than your experience because you were such an early adopter of Zoom rooms. You were basically helping us build out our standards, right, and our set list of hardware requirements. But
I don't think the page existed when we started our first Zoom room, and it was Daniel at Zoom who said, "Hey, we got this room thing." He goes, and I go to it right now. Show me what you have. Open the cabinets. What is that amp? What is that? Give me the make model. So we actually didn't quite standardize. There's some things now that we have standardized on, but we tried every possible camera solution, sound quality. We're smaller. We have probably a little bit more flexibility to look at what's out there and what people would just culturally accept. At the time, too, we had a hard time finding an AV vendor to partner with because all of them were like, "Who's Zoom? Like, what are you doing, Ann? This is just," I don't know how many times I heard the word career limiting. Like, what are you doing? Are you purposely trying to go off and do something new? So a lot of flexibility. And actually, both of our AV vendors have become Zoom partners since our introduction. So I think over the last few years, as Zoom has grown, we've grown. And our AV vendors, we kind of just pulled them along and said, you have to do this. So, in fact, one of our AV vendors is in London, and he's set up with your new London shop.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So how did the management aspects of our Zoom rooms, I know you saw it evolve from where it was. We didn't have much management early on, but for your deployment, there was quite a bit of management that we had. Did that play a key role in getting this deployed?
It helped with the setup and getting everything done. We could pre-build all of our back-end, that 1-minute installation step was all pre-done. So all that the technician had to do was come in and log into the room, and it was there and ready to go. That helped a lot with the rollouts. There's some other things that have come on since then that have made it easier to manage. So one of the biggest problems that I was yelling at you weekly on was, give me an IP address that tells me what the IP address of the system is so we can do just a simple SNMP check on it. You finally released that this last 2 weeks ago. That's huge. It seems stupid, but it's a really huge piece that has helped with it. So the management stuff is involved. The console is there. And we leverage the API for a lot of things. And having that API so we can programmatically look at things and put up a dashboard that generates tickets in our ServiceNow environment when a room is down is a huge help from a management and keeping rooms up and running and things like that.
And for us on the dashboard side of it, I think we were using the dashboard before. It was called the dashboard. I just had a little URL I followed. And it has significantly changed the way we managed the rooms before. We had a lot of, and especially in the beginning, this is your baby. You want it to always be up and online. And our staff in the different offices, the EAs, as well as the technical staff would walk through the rooms constantly throughout the day, make sure, like, is it what we expected to see? And now with the dashboard, I can quickly view which rooms need to be upgraded. And we've actually been on a lot of beta code because we're doing some fun audio stuff. So it's making sure a room doesn't get upgraded because we want to keep that room on that beta code so we can give feedback to Zoom.
So you said fun audio stuff, and if I'm not mistaken, you had some audio challenges early on.
Yeah.
And I know there's some chocolates out here on the table, and I think there's a little story about that. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, let's talk about this. I actually think I could write a book called How a Peppermint Patty Changed My Career Trajectory, or could have if it didn't go well. Now remember, I did say we were going from really old Cisco Tamberg equipment, and the audio spectrum there is analog. So if you think about what you hear with an analog line, it's about this, and digital is about this, and obviously we were picking up sounds, and I'm just going to do this here, and if anyone here in the front row would like to pick up and wiggle these guys, listen to this. Now how does that sound during a meeting? Oh, people love these. Now on top of that, imagine long tables and 8 glass bowls. Just hands going in those bowls through the whole meeting. Because you're not going to take the top one. You're going to get in there and dig. You're going to get in there and dig for the right guy. So maybe the melted ones are on top. Who knows? But these little guys, although I don't think I'll ever eat another one in the rest of my life, these little guys really were the reason we learned so much about audio. And it wasn't a positive experience. I was desperately, I was on the verge of going back. I was calling H323, I was calling other companies and saying, all right, I've tried, I'm taking professional, I wouldn't call it professional creds, but I was definitely taking a professional hit in recommendations and trust within my organization, all because of bowls of these. And that's when we engaged with Nick and the Pro Services group. And before that, we kind of were doing it on our own, and Nick had reached out a couple times and said, hey, do you need help? And it was through a couple conversations at a conference, and Andrew's like, what's going on? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to have to leave you guys. I love you to death, but we can't get past this. You can hear it. And Pro Services engaged with us. They actually dug into each one of our rooms. And we have not a standards build. We have integrated rooms, and we have some pictures up here of some of the rooms. I didn't get the London rooms on there. They're actually gorgeous. Very corporate. And you'll actually see some new mics, but generally we use the button mics, which I'm sure you're aware if you're building a room, I would just say run for the hills, don't do it. Some ceiling beam forming, but even the beam forming, I went and visited Sequoia and I was doing this and called Rick, and Rick's like, no, Ann, I hear the rappers. So the difference between analog and digital audio. So our rooms are highly integrated. You won't see any equipment. In fact, I was going to take pictures of our AV rack. We have rooms, closets built out for AV gear, because remember I told you I had racks and racks of gear. And every time we'd build on a new facility, I would say, hey, I need a 10 by 10 space for my rack. And they were like, man, what? Like, I'm not building you a room if you don't give me my space. And when I went to take the picture, I realized there's only one piece of equipment racked anymore. I was like, oh, that's a sad little photo. So I didn't, and it was very dirty. It's now turned into a massive storage room of junk.
So what changed? What did professional services actually come out and help with?
We use biamp. We use Tessera biamps in some of our rooms. We have Clear One, Converge, audio processors in other of our rooms. So the first step was really understanding the acoustics of the room. And we had poorly designed acoustical rooms. Our London office, it really old building, tall ceilings. We actually, which I wish I would have shared these photos, we actually fabric wrapped the entire room in the curtains that you get at these conferences to prove to them it's the acoustics of the room. So identifying first the equipment, is it configured correctly? What are the room acoustics? What are we talking about reverb rates? And my UK AV vendor hired an audio specialist to come out, and he's like, oh, this is fine for UK. I'm like, what? What does that mean, fine for UK? And then I realized that their standards are different and what they're used to hearing is different. And they're used to the echoes and the reverb inside their rooms because they all work in buildings that are 200 years old. So really recommendations around how do I acoustically fit out a room, mics. We're actually testing in this upper small room here on the left. You'll see a couple little black pods right there. Those are new mics that we are testing with Zoom's Pro Services guidance and completely bypassing the biamp, which if anyone here wants to have a discussion on stability around the amps that we've tested, I can tell you why we're trying to get rid of our amps. Just one more piece of equipment to manage. And we've had 3, we call them Mondays. They're happy Mondays, where we meet for about a 12-hour session. And those mics are not awesome to look at, but the audio quality has been amazing. We have a couple mumblers in our rooms, and even the mumblers are being picked up.
They pick up very well.
They do.
And this is all running through the software DSP that we now have built into our Zoom Room software, so we can handle multiple microphones, the level gaining, the gating on them, and really give a clean experience. If you want to see these mics, we actually have them in our center booth. We have them set up. They're called MXL microphones. Please stop by and take a look at them. It's really, really great. And the software DSP, right, if you're building out a room where you just don't have the buying power for that size of a room, is my mic out? Okay, sorry. So if you don't have the buying power to go to a full DSP, like a Clear One or a biamp, the software DSP comes as just a feature of Zoom, and you can get really great coverage in your conference room. So I'm really glad you are testing this out.
Yeah, we're having a really good time with it. Good feedback.
Excellent.
That's great. And this just points out that audio absolutely is one of the most important things in the conference room. Understanding your acoustics, understanding the room, understanding how it's going to be used is very important into the design of your Zoom rooms, right? So I'd love to go on and ask both of you a question that I'm sure everybody would love, and I guess I'll start with Paul. Paul, you did a large deployment of Zoom rooms. If you could give 1 or 2 pieces of advice to everyone here in the audience about doing a large, massive deployment like this, what would they be?
So pre-planning, checklist. Sorry, too many words. And then just spending a lot of time up front testing and playing with things and really seeing the environment in action. Even with our pre-testing and planning, we got surprised by some audio issues that we had to deal with right as we went forward. You know, Murphy's Law, everything was working perfectly with the Yamahas that we were using, and then all of a sudden something changed, and we spent about 2 weeks as we're deploying dealing with audio issues, and partnership with Zoom and Yamaha helped fix all of that, but it's just, you've got to keep testing. And then you've got to keep testing constantly, so you have the situation where your business partners say, these rooms are better, I love these rooms, I like using them. They don't call out asking for problems or anything anymore, and it's just so much better. And then I guess the last thing I'll say is it's very interesting to hear when you have conversations with someone and you're talking to someone on chat or on IM or whatever tool you're using, or even on the phone, and they go, can we Zoom each other? So it started to become a little bit of a verb inside of Gap on different meetings and things like that. So it's pretty impressive.
That's really
to
great.
see.
That's really great. And Anne?
Yeah, for us, I would say the first thing is know your audience. Know what their expectations are, and we're all designing to different environments. So some of us have 5 people, and you're in that startup world, and some of us here are 15,000 employee organizations that are hardened rooms. So know your audience. And I wouldn't say that when we rolled out Zoom, kind of knew what we were doing. There were a few people using it. And I don't know that I did a great job of communicating, because I really didn't know what was going to happen. We just threw a room together and thought, okay, go in here and try this until I can figure out how to get the budget to buy all this new stuff for you. So know your audience. One group that was surprising in our rollout that we were not quite prepared for was our large executive admin staff. So in our firm, pretty much if you work there, you have an executive admin who supports you, and he or she schedules all your meetings. We're an Outlook O365 shop, so they schedule your meetings. They're heavily in Outlook all day long. They love their Outlook, and in the beginning, the Outlook plugin was not the simplest to use. It was a little buggy. And we ended up actually hiring a trainer to come in completely outside of our organization to walk through the EA's job, because if you mess, in VC, if you mess with your EA staff, you're done. Like that's just not good. You want to keep your EA staff happy and efficient, and they've got a big workload. So we had a trainer come in, and this totally is off Zoom rooms here. But come in and train and walk through the process, document the process of what they were doing, and then working with Zoom on the email templates. I mean, when we started with Zoom Rooms, the Outlook plugin, you couldn't brand that template. I was like, that's not going to flow for us. So branding our templates, how we wanted to say it, changing numbers up, it all worked out.
Yeah, so it goes down to preparation
Yes.
and preparation, even on the training side. And what I will say is, as an early adopter, we were also ramping up our CSM team and our training teams. And so we have all of these services to give you support as you're going through a large deployment of your conference room. So we have our pro services team, for Ann, that was crucial in going in and really digging in and figuring out what the audio issues truly were. And then from our CSM team, which is great, to our training team, we can really help you build a plan to move forward in your deployment of these rooms, especially if you're looking at a massive deployment.
Now that your deployments are mostly complete, I know you've got a few in the pipe, Paul. For both of you, though, at this point, if you were to compare your conference rooms today to your old solution, how are things looking from an uptime, from a usage, from a AV or IT support perspective, using Zoom Rooms versus the alternative?
So when we started our journey, we put together a graph that showed Zoom meetings and other meetings, and it took about 3 weeks for that graph to cross and then go past where the top of the other line was before we switched over to the new solution. And we're doing about, what was the number? I sent it to you this morning, sorry. It just went out of my mind, like 2.9 million minutes a month of calls. 6.2 million. See, I'm off by 50%. We're doing about 6.2 million worth of calls. We were checking to see if we could catch up with Oracle, and that's not going to happen. But the other thing is it's not just the number of minutes, it's the number of total meetings that are happening. And I can get on Zoom, and I'm a little crazy this way. I'll get on the console at 10 o'clock at night before I go to bed, or at 4 in the morning when I wake up in the morning. And we'll see, just from our Asia users, like 3 times the total number of meetings that are happening in London and Asia. I'll see 100 people on Zoom doing calls at 10 o'clock at night. Now, I know they're not all in Asia because we don't have that many people in Asia, but there's people just constantly working and communicating and talking to each other during the day. And then to add one more thing to what Ann said, one of the key things, if you're an admin-based company, like Gap is and like your company is, your first line of training should be your admins. You need to make good friends of your admins about your rooms, and you need to train them first before you train anyone else. The other people will figure it out, and you still want to train them, but if you get them to be on your side, number one, they're going to pick up the phone when someone messes up your room and does something wrong to your room, and help you out and not turn it into a big issue. And they're always going to be there to help you, and they'll learn. The cool part about what we found with the admins is they're more than willing to learn something new and take on a new task and be your front line of defense for managing your rooms.
That's great. Yeah.
For us, if we look at, and I didn't chart any of it, but take the month before we rolled out Zoom. We were at about 14,000 minutes a month to intercall, and we had about 10 hours of only TCV Office to TCV Office video conferencing. And if we wanted to do an external one, which happened about once a month, we actually had to get a bridge provider because we couldn't talk to anybody in the world because it was that locked down. We're now at about 65,000 minutes a month. 40% of that is Zoom rooms and Windows clients. Completely has changed the way we internally communicate. And Zoom is definitely a verb in our organization. My boss will say, hey, just Zoom me, just Zoom me. And just on a personal note, my family now. I use Zoom to communicate with my kids to help them do their homework in college. We actually have a family Sunday Zoom meeting where from 2 to 2:30 you can come on in and because we're just spread out everywhere and all my children can come join and grandchildren and spend a half an hour as a family even though we're all over the place. So Zoom is definitely a verb in our world.
Yeah, we love hearing that. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, it looks like our time, we're about 10 minutes out, and we'd love to take some questions if you have anything for Ann and Paul.
And I was just going to say, please eat these guys, because I'm not taking them back. They're not allowed.
Can we get a mic runner as well?
Please eat.
I'll come bring this right now.
Hi, I work for government, and so my question is about having an elected participate in a meeting where the main meeting is an amplified room. Has any systems been deployed that way, where the incoming audio is amplified to the room, and where you kill any echo or feedback?
We have a couple of conference centers, both in San Francisco and New York, where we do back and forth meetings where our CEO will talk to the company, and we'll have participants in New York and talking to us. And we have Zoom rooms running inside of that amplified environment to make it work. It's a lot of work. We've had to do a lot of work on tuning and we use biamp, getting the tuning to work correctly. Acoustics are hugely important. So in our New York cafe, it's a cafe almost like the big hall out there with metal walls and ceilings and high roofs. So we just have to make sure we place mics correctly and work it as best we can. Sometimes if it's a really bad situation and the person talking wants to be in the middle of the room and we're going to get an echo, we have a guy on the mic muting the other side to keep the echo down. But we're constantly looking for ways to add acoustic treatments to the room and make things work better.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to pretty much the environment that you walk into, right? Regardless of the technology that you're putting in there, taking into consideration the acoustics of a room is one of the most important pieces, especially, for instance, if they're walking around with lav mics or countryman mics on their body and there are ceiling speakers in the entire space. Now, you would typically probably run that into a DSP, like a biamp or like a Clear One. And yeah, we interface with those right out of the box. They have USB interfaces for us to interface with. So as long as you get the environment right and you get the sound right, putting Zoom rooms in, it should be a fairly simple task.
That's one of the benefits of Zoom Room. I haven't encountered a room yet that can't be turned into a Zoom Room. Because we're off-the-shelf components, because we can work with the Pro Audio or the USB devices, you can build out any room to be a Zoom Room, and our Pro Services team is here to help you design that setup as well.
But one thing to remember is even though it's worked once, the next time you do an event in there, retest everything else. I mean, pretend it's like a TV show where you're rehearsing and practicing and that, because something is going to change.
Chairs can change it, right? Mm-hmm. Adding more chairs, adding tables will change.
Or the software version of something changed and it causes an echo that wasn't there last time. So you always, like when we do our events, we do a half a day of preparation and a half a day of rehearsals, of just tech rehearsals. Forget about the audience, the people that are speaking, coming in and presenting. That's another 4 hours on top of that. And we just realized we have to do that.
Great.
How are you handling maintenance? Like, I'm thinking about things from kind of a traditional Polycom Cisco annual maintenance contract standpoint. Are you just keeping spare PCs around?
We keep. Do you want to go?
Yeah, we do. I mean, you're talking consumable items, so it's a Mac Mini sitting there ready to go and with the configuration on it.
We keep spare PCs around. We have like 3 or 4 in our inventory. We don't keep PCs in every single country, so we'll ship something and we'll tell someone to get by for a few days without it. Monitors. Most of our systems are like this. The dual screen monitor on this on a cart like this. If one monitor goes out, we'll just disconnect it until we get a new one in. You know, in the United States, Best Buy's a couple hours away from getting you a new TV if you absolutely need it for the right event. So that works pretty good. I mean, the beauty of this stuff is it's consumable equipment. We do keep extra. We do have extra. We bought extra mics and the Yamaha mic systems and mics for, you know, someone's going to drop one and break it, and you have to have those things around.
Yeah, the cost of keeping the PCs in a closet versus a hardware codec is significantly different. We used to do that at Logitech as well. We'd have spare systems ready to go, but you know that's a $6, $7, $8, sometimes $10,000 system that you're not technically going to put in the field unless something breaks. But we didn't want to have to go through the whole RMA process, and you know our rooms are down for days, weeks at a time if something goes really wrong. So that is one of the beautiful pieces of non-proprietary hardware.
And the other thing is, the interesting thing that I find is most of these come with a 2-year warranty. So if your TV goes out, which is going to go out in the first 2 years unless you've got it around for 10 years, you get a new one from Samsung or LG or whoever you're buying them from right away. You got to wait a while and you got to go through their pain, but it works good. And all the other vendors, the minimum warranty that I've seen is 2 years nowadays, so that's really nice. So we have no more maintenance budget. We do have an annual maintenance budget that we put aside in the event something is going to happen, but we don't like have to pay, you know, Cisco or any of the other guys a $20,000 a year maintenance budget that we have to renegotiate every year.
Yeah, we were around $40,000 a year in annual maintenance costs to Cisco, Tandberg, 2 AV vendors, and we had no spare parts. That 40 grand had nothing. No one's, you know, got a, you know, so the room, if it really did go down, single screen failure, you know, one of the codecs goes out, we're waiting 3, 4, 5, 7 days for them to source the parts. It was really sad. So now I think my budget now, I carry $5,000 on the books for annual maintenance, and that's it.
Great.
For those of you that have a standardized system, would you feel comfortable sharing your components, your component decisions with us?
Sure.
I saw them, but I couldn't see who the makers or the model numbers were.
Yeah,
But-
yeah, we can. We'll send you our list.
Thanks.
Great.
Yeah, I was just wondering, we're using the Mac Minis and the iPads, and it's easy enough to update, like when Zoom comes out with the new version or whatever, but does anybody have any thoughts on like just updating like the iOS software itself, or like do you have any kind of products that you know of or best practices for that?
So we register all of our iPads through MDM. We use AirWatch, and we just push the updates out through that, and it's really nice. The other thing is, if you buy a lot of iPads from Apple, enroll in their device.
Device
Thank you.
enrollment program.
Enroll in that program, because that makes it easy. You just turn the sucker on, and it connected to the network, and it just becomes live.
There's some added benefit to that too. If you're buying a large quantity through certain resellers or Apple, the device enrollment program is going to work with all the major MDMs, AirWatch, Mobile Iron, Mass 360, and it allows you to lock your devices down too, so you can put them into a supervised mode so your users aren't fooling around when they shouldn't be.
Hi, from a service desk point of view, the teams that are kind of managing and doing any fixes, how do you manage notifications of issues in rooms? We find that there are so many notifications regularly with speakers or microphones being disconnected, et cetera, that the kind of notifications become a blur and no one looks at them. So how do you go about managing that and making sure that when there actually is a problem, the right people are there to fix it?
So I do want to share with you on that one, because in the beginning, and I shared with you, Pro Services got involved in our audio, we had a ton of false positives in the beginning. We turned all the notifications on. It was just a storm of noise. But it had everything to do with our rooms weren't quite configured properly, our biamps weren't configured properly. And that noise is considerably reduced. Now I think the alerts that I see, and they still do come to my cell phone because I'm a little protective of what's going on. Those are really, like, I will email the team going, hey, did someone just do that? And they're like, Anna, I'm just updating the software. Relax, dude. Take a chill pill. It's cool. We got this under control. So we really significantly reduce those. So I think if you do have a lot of noise, engage with someone, find out what that noise is being caused by. We had a bad biamp. There's some other factors that created that.
Yeah, and you can also, I don't know if you use our new management portal, but building your hierarchy, alerting the right people in the organization to get those. And then if you still are seeing that maybe it's noisy, I would definitely reach out to our professional services team or your SE team. You probably have engaged with an SE. Yep, and let's see if we can figure out if it's faulty cables, maybe devices are flipping on and off, but we can help you figure that out.
So I know we've come up on time. We will still be here to answer questions afterwards, but some of you may want to get to lunch, and I know someone wants to go home with the Zoom room, so we're going to turn it over to Jeremiah.
Turn it over to Jeremiah.
Can I get a microphone? Sorry, Dave.
Yeah, I get a microphone. Listen to I guess they did.
All right, let's hear it for our panel.